Hi. It's daytime. That's fucking weird. I always record at night. No wonder this shit looks so much better. That being said, welcome to my extremely scuffed review of Metroid Samus Returns. It'll get the review it deserves one day, just not today and not for a while. 2D Metroid games skipped out on the DS era for some reason. 13 years between these two games, and Metroid fans weren't starving as they got all of this, but it's weird to think that these games just sort of took a break similar to Mario. This is also the first Metroid game not to be developed by Nintendo R&D1. It was instead handed over to Mercury Steam, who had done previous work on Castlevania. They were given the task of remaking Metroid 2, a game that I think is already pretty good, so what exactly could they improve outside of the obvious? Well, for starters, it's much more of a reimagining of Metroid 2, the same concept, story, and enemies, but the game isn't as one-to-one as Zero Mission was to the original Metroid. I first played this when hyping myself up for Metroid Dread, as they're both developed by Mercury Steam. This was before I played the original Metroid 2 because, like I said in that video, I thought that game was boring. I thought it looked very boring. So I spent pretty much an entire vacation just doing nothing but playing this game and all the downtime I had. But I never beat it until now, and it's not because I didn't like it, far from it. I had a lot of fun, otherwise I wouldn't have played so much of it. But I wonder what it was about it that made me just drop it like that. So I guess we'll see as I review it. That's a take. For starters, you have full 360 degree aiming, meaning that you can be way more precise than you ever could in any 2D Metroid game. You also have a melee counter. When enemies flash to signal their attack, you counter it and kill them in one shot and get a lot more drops that now float to you by themselves. Starting off pretty great, and from this point on, it's pretty much Metroid 2. At least on a conceptual level. You go into the cave, kill the evolved Metroids, and when you're done with the level, the acid goes down, letting you get to a new area. And yeah, although now you put Metroid's DNA into this statue and it triggers the acid to drop. But with that said, the main Samus gameplay, like getting through each room, is almost completely different than the Game Boy original, and I don't fully remember if any of the rooms are one-to-one like in Zero Mission. You have this new Aeon meter for certain abilities, rapid fire, temporary invincibility, slow motion, and the best one without a doubt, Scan Pulse. It's like the X-ray scope but done right. I said it right this time. Instead of coming to a complete stop to look at each block, you can now just scan the whole room and it marks blocks that can be broken. So much better than before. Now onto the Metroid fights, they're much better than the originals. Because of the better aiming and melee counter, these fights are often more energetic and involved than what the Game Boy could do. Although some of them do just consist of standing there and then you counter and then you shoot them and repeat that process. But it's not a high bar to do better than the original Metroid 2, and there are a couple stinkers in there. To start with the weapons, now that there are super missiles which weren't in the original, you need a way to switch between them, and that falls to the touchscreen to switch between beam types, such as that beam that I can't remember the name of, Ice Beam and Grapple Beam, and with the missiles, even though my button's not fucking barely working, to switch between regular missiles and super missiles. Now, this isn't the huge problem, but if you want to switch quickly, that means taking one of your fingers off of the buttons to go switch, which isn't that hard, but it's more annoying than it is in other games, even with Super where you have to push the same button over and over again. The second is this bastard. Sometimes you'll find an empty Metroid room. There's nothing you can do here, so you leave. And then you find a Metroid and fight it, but before you can kill it, it runs off like a little bitch. So you have to chase it to one of the previously empty rooms and repeat the process until it dies. They're like the late game boos from Luigi's Mansion. And the reference comes full circle. Again, it doesn't ruin the game, but it's just a strange choice. And other than those guys, killing Metroid is pretty much just the same as before. You kill them all in the area, you lower the toxic grape soda, you get new items, some of which are new to this game specifically, that weren't in the original or any other Metroid game for that matter. And this might just be me, but I feel like you spider ball around a lot more than in the original. I know I mentioned it in that game how if you're ever lost, then when in doubt, just spider ball, you'll find a secret wall. But in this game, I feel like a lot of time was just spent on the ceilings, and maybe it's just because I'm not as familiar with this one and I didn't use a guide at all as well I did for the end of Metroid 2. It's just a weird thing I notice, and like I said, I could be talking out of my ass. Not a big problem, but it does make me wish there was a way to go faster in Morph Ball. Thankfully, a lot of the traversal has been cut down. You can now fast travel between certain points, and we finally have checkpoints, which is good because this game is hard as balls. No other Metroid game has killed me this many times. Not even Metroid 1. Not even my first playthrough of Metroid 1. It took me longer than I'm going to ever admit to get the counter timing down, and some of the Metroids are just tanks. Not to mention a completely new boss, the Diggernaut. This giant thing is a curveball in the form of a giant robot. You're just doing your thing, though, all of a sudden this guy shows up and says, "Run, bitch!" And then you think the worst of it was over. Just for a little while later he shows up, and now I remember why I never beat this game, because I was at risk of snapping my 3DS in half. The first two phases I got the hang of, but they took so long that when a third phase rolled around, I just couldn't be bothered to learn it and I dropped the game. Once you've killed all the Metroids and beat the Queen, which is again a much better fight, but again it's not a high bar, you find the Metroid larva, and this version of the scene kind of made me realize something. More so Samus's body language than the scene itself. SR-388 is the Metroid's homeworld. The only reason the Metroids are a threat to the rest of the galaxy is because of the Galactic Federation and the space pirates meddling with them, and so they send Samus to kill all of them. And I get that they were made to be weapons, but it's still a genocide at the end of the day. And while I get it and I'm completely fine with murdering these fucking things, it is something to think about, and I believe that there was some intention of Samus also coming to that conclusion. But like I said, I can't really feel bad for murdering the species that gave us this fucker. Once you have the baby, you can go back through the areas to have it eat these crystals you've been passing by but couldn't break before. Or you can go back to your ship where, oh son of a bitch!
Damn! He ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3.
This game is a damn good remake. On a technical level, everything is better. The music, the visuals, the boss fights, the level design in some areas. It outshines the original in pretty much every way, but I don't think it completely replaces it like Zero Mission does for Metroid 1. Zero Mission was almost one-to-one with the original, except the end segment and a few rooms here and there, and it pretty much just did the first game, but better, improved in every single way as opposed to changed. A very similar thing could be said about this one, but it's been changed so much that I still see value in going back to the original as a completely unique experience. This game has a completely different feel from the original, a better feel in my opinion, but if I feel like playing classic Metroid and for some reason I don't play Super or Zero Mission or Fusion, I can still go back and play the original Metroid 2 and not hate every waking minute of it, unlike Metroid 1. Mercury Steam did a damn good job with this game, so it's no wonder that they were trusted with the next original mainline game, Metroid 5, also known as Metroid Dread. So join me next time when I look at that game. Until then, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Go check out my other reviews, subscribe with notifications on, and if it's your birthday, happy birthday, and I will see you with a gag about how I will fuck. Just leave.